Sylvester Stallone walked into the Good Morning America studio that morning carrying his usual calm strength, the kind that made him a legend in Hollywood. He greeted the hosts politely, Michael Strahan among them, and seemed ready for a friendly chat about his upcoming film. The energy in the room was warm, polite, professional. But beneath the surface, Stallone carried more than just his acting legacy. He carried pride, experience, and the scars of countless battles on screen and off. At first, the interview flowed smoothly. Michael Strahan asked about Stallone's latest role, and Sylvester spoke in his measured, gravelly voice, describing the physical and emotional challenges he embraced. He smiled graciously when discussing his co-stars, thanked the crew, and reflected on his decades-long career. It was exactly the kind of respectful, wide-ranging conversation GMA viewers expected. But then Strahan shifted. With a casual but pointed tone, he remarked on Stallone's age, suggesting that Hollywood might be moving on from old-school action heroes. It was framed as a compliment, admiration for his staying power, yet the question carried an undercurrent. Stallone's face tightened almost imperceptibly. The camera caught a flicker in his eyes, the moment when grace meets pride. Stallone leaned forward, still calm. "Age isn't the enemy," he replied steadily. He spoke about the wisdom and grit that come with years of experience. He reminded Strahan, and the audience, that many of his most beloved characters were defined not by youth, but by endurance, heart, and resilience. There was respect in his tone, but also a warning. Strahan pushed further, asking if Stallone ever felt irrelevant, or if younger stars made him feel obsolete. The question seemed innocent enough, part of a broader discussion about legacy. But Stallone's jaw tightened. He paused, his voice low when he responded, "Legacy isn't about staying young, it's about staying true." The studio felt a shift. The conversation was no longer safe. The hosts exchanged glances. Strahan, normally confident, hesitated, sensing the tension. Stallone, still composed, spoke of sacrifice, written scripts at 40, sleepless nights on set, the weight of making films that inspired people who felt lost. His tone was earned, heavy. He wasn't grandstanding, he was simply explaining why his work mattered, to him and to his fans. Then Strahan made a remark that sounded casual but felt like salt. He questioned whether Stallone's iconic roles, Rocky, Rambo, still resonated with modern audiences. He framed it as curiosity, something news anchors ask. But to Stallone, it felt like a dismissal of everything he built. The silence in the studio stretched. Stallone's eyes narrowed. He paused, then responded softly but firmly, "Those characters were never just about fighting. They were metaphors for life, for struggle, hope, redemption." He looked directly at Strahan, challenging him to understand. There was passion in his voice now, a fire that went beyond defending his career. He defended his purpose. Strahan tried to laugh it off. He said, "I get it, but isn't it time for something fresh, something different?" His tone was curious, not cruel, but Stallone didn't see humor. He leaned back, steepled his fingers, and his voice dropped. "Fresh doesn't mean better. Different doesn't mean deeper." He made a subtle but powerful stand. Not all stories deserve to be replaced. The audience felt the tension. A few people shifted in their seats. The production team exchanged worried glances. Stallone's composure cracked slightly when he added, "When I made Rocky, I knew what it felt like to be nobody. I knew how it felt to have nothing, and I wanted my story to tell people, you can rise." It wasn't just nostalgia, it was a mission. Strahan, taken aback, nodded slowly. He said, "That's a powerful message." But then, in the same breath, he asked if Stallone ever worried he was living in the past, trapped in those old stories. The question was soft, but it pressed. Stallone's face hardened. He was no longer just an actor, he was a man defending his legacy. Stallone's reply came calm but sharp. "The past is not a prison, it's a foundation." He told Strahan about how his early failures, his rejections, and his uphill fights gave him the perspective to make art that mattered. He spoke quietly and no shouting, but every word hit with weight. The studio felt small in that moment, as if the giants of his past were watching. Strahan pivoted, trying to lighten things up by asking about Stallone's next project, hoping to ease the mood. But Stallone refused to let go of the topic. He said, "You ask about new roles, but for me, The most important role is the one where I'm honest." He emphasized how acting for him wasn't just entertainment, that it was a way to connect, to heal, and to inspire. There was a pause. Strahan swallowed, clearly uncomfortable. Stallone continued, his voice barely louder than a whisper, "When I make a film, I feel like I'm writing a letter to my younger self." He confessed that he still carries the doubts, the hunger, the longing to prove something, mostly to himself. The cameras captured every flicker of vulnerability. Strahan nodded slowly. He admitted that he respected Stallone's journey, but then ventured further. Did Stallone ever feel taken for granted? Did he think that Hollywood underestimates him now? The question seemed risky, but Stallone didn't shy away. He said, "Underestimate me at your peril." It was a calm warning, not a threat, but the resolve was unmistakable. The hosts glanced at each other. The tone of the interview had shifted from promotional to confrontational, from playful to personal. Stallone's aura filled the room. He wasn't just a movie star anymore. He was a storyteller defending his soul. He spoke of time, of mortality, of wanting his stories to outlive him, to mean something, not just to entertain. Strahan looked surprised, but leaned in. He asked if Stallone felt a responsibility to younger generations, to pass on the lessons he learned through decades of hardship. Stallone responded softly, "Yes, I feel like every scar, every setback, is my message to them. That even when you're beaten, you can still stand. That even when you lose, you can still fight." The audience leaned forward. Stallone's voice quivered just slightly when he recalled the early days, writing scripts in small apartments, struggling to make rent, auditioning for parts while losing hope. He said those days shaped him, not just as an actor, but as a man. "I survived," he said. "I stayed, and that's what matters." Strahan's tone shifted to admiration. He said, "That's courageous." But Stallone's response came with a hint of bitterness. It wasn't courageous, it was necessary. He explained that for him, quitting was never an option. His work, his fights, his failures, all of it was part of a bigger story, a story he still feels compelled to tell. Suddenly, Strahan asked a pointed question, "Is part of you scared that people won't remember you?" The question, coming live on air, landed heavy. Stallone's face softened. He let out a breath. For a moment, he seemed unguarded. "Of course," he admitted, "but I don't make films for memory. I make them because they need to be made." The room fell quiet. Stallone's voice dropped further. He spoke of legacy not in terms of fame, but of impact, of touching hearts, of inspiring souls. "I don't need to be remembered in billboards," he said. "I want to be remembered in people's lives." It felt raw, almost spiritual. He was not just an actor defending his place, he was a creator defending his truth. Strahan looked at Stallone with new respect. He leaned back, nodded slowly, and said, "Thank you for sharing that." But just then, he made a comment about Hollywood's shifting culture, about how action movies are less bankable, how studios chase younger talent. The words felt dismissive again. Stallone's jaw stiffened. Sylvester Stallone paused. He stared at Strahan for a long moment. Then, in a controlled yet intense tone, he said, "If you think my era is over, you don't understand my work." His voice was steady, not angry, but his pride was evident. He spoke with truth, not theatrics. He reminded Strahan that cinema is not just about novelty, it's about soul. There was a crackle in the air. Strahan swallowed, unprepared for Stallone's intensity. The interviewer tried to soften, to steer back to lighter topics, but Stallone held firm. "I came here to talk about my new film," he said, his voice firm. "But I'm not leaving without saying this. Stories matter, and so do the people who tell them." Strahan nodded slowly, but there was tension in his posture now. He said, "Of course," as if conceding, but Stallone wasn't finished. He leaned forward, voice low, "I don't ask for sympathy. I ask for understanding." He described the sacrifices, the doubts, the lonely nights of creation. He spoke of a life lived during both literal and metaphorical. As the interview neared its end, Stallone's tone softened a little. He thanked the audience for letting him speak, for giving him space to be more than just an action hero. He thanked Strahan too, oddly, for pushing him, because in that pressure, he found clarity. He realized he still has something to say, and he wasn't done fighting. But before he left, Stallone paused once more. He looked Strahan in the eye and said quietly, "Don't mistake softness for weakness." The words hung in the air. The studio lights seemed brighter, the silence deeper. The audience listened. Producers leaned forward. This was no promotional fluff, it was real. Stallone stood. He reached for his jacket. The cameras followed him. He offered a respectful nod to Strahan, to the hosts, to the audience. "Thank you for having me," he said, voice steady. He walked toward the exit, not with arrogance, but with purpose. He carried more than star power, he carried conviction. As he left the stage, the atmosphere remained heavy. Strahan exhaled, clearly affected. The co-hosts exchanged looks. The audience watched in near silence, some applauding softly, unsure what they had just witnessed. It was more than just a TV interview. It was a reckoning, for an icon, for his legacy, and for what he believed in. The segment ended, but the moment lingered. Viewers would talk about it for days. Social media would light up with clips, memes, and commentary. People would praise Stallone's passion and integrity. Others would debate his relevance. But one thing was clear. Sylvester Stallone didn't just fight in his movies. He fought for his story. And on that morning, he won a different kind of respect. After the cameras stopped rolling, the tension backstage was thick. Crew members whispered, unsure how to interpret what they'd just witnessed. Some thought Stallone's reaction was justified, others worried it would become a PR nightmare. Stallone, meanwhile, sat quietly in his dressing room, his assistant handing him water. He wasn't angry, he was reflective. Moments like these, he knew, came with being authentic in a world obsessed with sound bites. Michael Strahan, normally unshakable on camera, retreated to his office for a moment of quiet. He replayed the exchange in his head, wondering if he had pushed too far or simply done his job as a journalist. He respected Stallone deeply, yet he couldn't deny that something in the actor's words hit close, say about legacy, purpose, and how easily people in media confuse relevance with value. Within hours, clips of the interview flooded social media. Headlines blared, "Stallone erupts on Strahan," and "Rocky vs. GMA" hashtags trended worldwide. Fans praised Stallone for standing up for himself, while others accused him of overreacting. The debate caught fire across platforms. News analysts called it the most intense morning show moment of the year. Behind the scenes, ABC's public relations team met urgently to discuss messaging. They debated whether to frame it as a spirited conversation or issue a clarification. The consensus: play it safe. Within hours, an official statement read, Sylvester Stallone and Michael Strahan engaged in a passionate, thoughtful exchange about Hollywood and aging gracefully. But fans knew there was more beneath the surface. Stallone, however, refused to add fuel to the fire. He didn't tweet, post, or release any statement. Instead, he flew back to Los Angeles that afternoon. On the plane, he wrote in his notebook, a habit he's kept for decades, jotting down lines about pride, resilience, and the weight of perception. He turned confrontation into contemplation, just as he always had in his art. By the next morning, major entertainment outlets were dissecting every facial expression from the clip. Analysts paused at the moment Stallone leaned forward, labeling it the Stallone stare. Psychologists were interviewed on talk shows about why men of his generation defend their legacy so fiercely. What had started as an interview became a cultural discussion about aging, masculinity, and respect. Meanwhile, Strahan broke his silence during the next day's broadcast. He smiled, trying to lighten the air, and said, "Sometimes, real conversations get real." He praised Stallone's honesty and called him one of the toughest men alive, on and off screen. The comment drew applause from the live audience. It was his olive branch, a subtle, but sincere. Back in Los Angeles, Stallone finally watched the clip himself. He didn't smile or frown. He simply nodded once, recognizing the truth in his own tone. "I said what I meant," he murmured to a friend. For him, the matter was closed. Yet he also knew that moments like these defined how people saw him, not just as a fighter on screen, but as a man unwilling to let others write his story. As days passed, public sentiment began to shift. Fans who initially saw confrontation began to see conviction. Writers praised Stallone for voicing what many older artists feel as the struggle against being labeled obsolete. Commentaries emerged about Hollywood's obsession with youth and novelty, comparing Stallone's passion to the authenticity audiences had been craving. A week later, Stallone made his first public comment at a press junket for his film. Asked about a GMA moment, he chuckled. "Sometimes sparks fly when two passionate people talk," he said. The room laughed, but his eyes carried calm authority. "I've got nothing but respect for Michael," he added. That simple sentence diffused most of the lingering drama. Strahan responded soon after in an interview with Entertainment Tonight. "Sly's one of the realest guys out there," he said. "He speaks from the heart. You can't be mad at that." The quote went viral again, but this time, it sparked warmth instead of controversy. The feud narrative lost traction. What replaced it was mutual respect between two strong personalities. Industry insiders later revealed that the network received record engagement from the interview. Ratings for that episode skyrocketed. Ironically, what producers initially saw as a disaster became one of the most successful moments of the year. Audiences, it turned out, weren't craving perfection, they were craving truth. In the weeks that followed, Stallone's popularity surged anew. Younger fans who had never seen the Rocky films began streaming them, curious about the man behind the viral moment. Comment sections filled with phrases like "he's still the champ" and "respect the legend." The walk-off that never quite happened became a metaphor, standing your ground without throwing a punch. Months later, Strahan and Stallone met again, privately, at a charity event in Los Angeles. Observers said they greeted each other with genuine smiles and an embrace that spoke volumes. They posed for photos, joked about their viral sparring match, and promised to collaborate again someday. Time had turned tension into understanding and even friendship. Looking back, the incident became more than morning show gossip. It was a rare moment of raw truth in a polished world. Stallone didn't erupt out of rage, he erupted out of passion, defending not just his career but the principle that authenticity never expires. And when he walked out of that studio, the world remembered why Sylvester Stallone isn't just a movie star, he's a fighter who still knows how to win with words.